is Lucas Winter-Loffman. I'm a yoga teacher, and I'd like to talk about ADHD and yoga, or ADHD and meditation. Meditation is often talked about in terms of how it can help people focus, and for that reason, it's often supplemented with therapy for people with ADHD. So there's kind of a big question, which is, does meditation actually help with ADHD? And the short answer is yes. The longer answer is it depends on what kind of meditation you're talking about. Meditation isn't really necessarily a standardized term, and that's a little bit of a rabbit hole to get into. But meditation actually comes from the yoga traditions. So there are a number of different yogas which help people with ADHD focus because they help everyone focus. So the forms of yoga that help people focus better are Tratika, Dharana, watching the breath, and cleaning and organizing. That last one probably doesn't sound like meditation to you, but I'll explain in a moment. So the first one, Tratika. Tratika means to have your gaze set on a singular point and not allow it to flutter. You don't allow yourself to blink. You don't allow your eyes to gaze around at all. You're just focused on one singular point. And it's extremely useful for making yourself more focused. It can also help with vision in general, but that's another thing. One of my favorite forms of Tratika is Tratika yantras. So a yantra is a form, a geometric form. You've probably seen them before in gift shops or maybe online, maybe in the background in movies or something. But they're used very commonly in Indian spirituality and within Buddhism in general. They're kind of found all throughout Asia, through a lot of different spiritual cultures. Probably my favorite one that I like to work with is the Buddha yantra. To me personally, this helps a lot with setting up my mind to be more focused and intentful. It's a little bit difficult to describe why exactly yantra tratikas seem to work, but people tend to report that they do. People tend to report that they're more calm, they're more focused, and it'll depend on the type of yantra that is being worked with. But people do tend to report that they're more focused when they use these. So that's the first type. The second is dharana. Dharana literally means concentration. That's generally how it's translated. And it is any sort of practice where you are intensely keeping your focus on one sort of thing. So you can kind of see where already some of the lines can get a little bit blurred. Usually though, you wouldn't call Tratika dharana necessarily, but you could fall within that category. One of the areas of dharana that is often used is watching the breath. Sometimes people also like to watch their heartbeat, but it's much easier for most people to watch their breath. It's a little bit harder for people to notice their own heartbeat unless you're more sensitive or your heart's a little bit hardworking. But watching the breath is a very, very common practice in the meditative tradition. And simply how it's done is you will sit with your eyes closed, usually with your legs crossed, and you watch as your breath comes in, and you watch as your breath comes out. You'll probably have a thought come up in your mind, and then you let that thought just pass. You don't force the thought away, you just let it go. In the same way, you don't have to force the clouds away. When you want a blue sky, you just wait for them to go. So in that same way, you just let your thoughts drift off, and they always drift off on their own, you'll find, if you just don't engage. might say, well, I have a tendency to engage, and you probably will. But as you practice this, like any other skill, you're going to get better at disengaging. And your mind has no ability to lessen what it has. It only has the ability to increase. It's like a car with no brakes, but only a gas pedal. So the way you get it to slow down and stop is you just take your foot off the gas, if that makes any sense. So watching your breath is like taking your foot off the gas pedal. The last one that is very beneficial is cleaning and organizing. Now again, this doesn't really sound like a meditation, but within the Eastern cultures, within the spiritual cultures of the Eastern Hemisphere, cleaning and organizing the space you live in and the space you work in is an integral part of the meditative traditions. Whether you're looking at Taoism, Buddhism, any number of different Hinduisms, which is a little bit of a nonsensical term, but I won't get into that now. Basically, any sort of spiritual practice in the East, cleaning and organizing is an integral part. And there's a lot of different reasons for this, but why does this help with focus? Your mind, when it sees a cluttered area, will have in the back of your head this thought of, oh, I should clean this up. And it'll have that for every single thing. And every time you walk by a cluttered area, you have to have a small amount of willpower that you use on each thing you're noticing. And you might not consciously register it. In fact, you probably aren't. But on some level, people generally report that they are more fatigued when they are in a cluttered environment. They are just more tired. So when we clean our area, when we have it organized, we are freeing our environment of distractions, and we are freeing up the space in our brain and our mind that is trying to focus on one singular thing, which is the current task at hand. So why does all this seem to work? Well, it seems to work for the exact same reason that pharmaceutical medication, amphetamines generally, some sort of stimulant works with ADHD, which is you're using up your frontal lobes. So meditation, all of these different forms of dharana, are strengthening your frontal lobes, and they're allowing you to make your mind have a higher willpower. You have a higher sense of focus by training that specific, we can call it a muscle in your mind, if you'll allow a little bit of a metaphor or analogy, something of the matter. So by training this as often as you can, and how often you find you're able to train, I'll leave that up to you. A lot of people like to do it a couple times a week. If that's what you can do, great. Most people that are very engrossed in the meditative lifestyle will say every single day is a must. For people that are really hardcore, it'll take up several hours of their day. That's usually more for monks, but there's people who live in, family situations too that'll do that. It's less common, but it happens. So I'll leave that up to your own discernment. The question really comes down to is, how much do you find it's helping you? And how important is it to you? Those are the two questions you need to ask yourself. And in order to find out if it's really helping you, you really need to give it a consistent 3 months that you're going for. Give it 90 days of trying it. Just a few minutes a day. You can even just do 5 minutes a day for 90 days. And then ask yourself, is this helping? Another thing to watch out for while you're doing this, though, is fatigue. Because, as I said, you're using up your frontal lobes while you're doing this. You're using up the part of your mind which is engaging in willpower. So often it's best to do this either in the morning or the midday. It's much harder to do it at night because then you're tired. You've used up all your willpower for the day. That's why it gets more difficult to drown out your thoughts at nighttime. It gets more difficult not to pick up your phone and not to scroll on Netflix and Instagram and everything else. Your ability to regulate yourself goes down because your willpower is used up. So, I hope this helps. And if it does, please like and share with your friends. Please subscribe if you like more of this. And please check out my webpage. It is www.blueaurayoga.com. I teach meditation classes there, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you. Namaskaram.